So I'm joined here today by Beth Gardiner-Smith, CEO of Safe Passage. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have this event taking place today. We're obviously joined by Lord Dubbs, and we'll be talking in detail about the Kindertransport. I wondered if you could just tell us or give us your sense of what lessons that has provided for us as we look forward to tackling today's refugee challenge.
Yeah, sure. So Safe Passage started back in 2015 in response to what we saw, which was huge numbers of people arriving into Europe driven by major conflicts across the world. And we started really because of a mission that was taken to Calais, where a group of volunteers and lawyers simply went to the camp and asked people there why they were there and why they were trying to reach the UK. And what they found was that many of them were there because they had family in the UK, and many were there as unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. And this was particularly shocking for the group that first went out there. Certainly myself, I went out in 2015, and it was just very evident how many of these very young people were there on their own. You know, they may have met up with different groups along the way. They may have been there because of smugglers and even traffickers, but they were alone and as children. Through that process, and in 2015 and 2016, Lord Dubbs himself emerged as really a leader politically in what was a very chaotic environment. And he was a leader because he himself had experienced not the same, but something similar to what those children were going through. And the moral leadership he showed in passing legislation to help unaccompanied asylum-seeking children find refuge and find safe passage in the UK was, I think, a huge inspiration to a lot of people across the UK. And indeed across Europe. We meet people across Europe who know of Lord Dubbs as a child of the Kindertransport and are inspired by what he did to help unaccompanied children today. And today we're joined by a number of kind who came as children on the Kindertransport just over 80 years ago. And what we found by working with them, by working with Lord Dubbs and by being in contact with these remarkable individuals is that they feel a very strong sense of the weight of history on them. That Britain 80 years ago provided them with a lifeline.
Yeah.
It was a group of volunteers and ordinary individuals across the UK who said, actually, what's going on in Europe, what's going on in Germany right now, the pogroms, and the annexing of the Jewish people is wrong. And actually, in the UK, we can step up and do our bit. And they built the Kindertransport. It wasn't a government-led initiative; it was a voluntary initiative. And those kind, they understand that. They understand what that has done for them and their lives, and they feel very keenly that opportunities should also be available for child refugees, unaccompanied child refugees today who are in Europe in different circumstances, but no less dire.
And that approach has led many people to say that actually we are creating, in effect, a pull factor for refugees. Do you think that is wildly exaggerated, or what's your view on that?
Yeah, it's something that we hear quite a lot, is that the creation of safe routes for these children within Europe may encourage other children to travel to Europe in order to access those routes. And you can understand people's concerns when it comes to that, because, of course, what we do not want to do is see more children taking these dangerous journeys, because so many children lose their lives on migratory routes and trying to cross, whether it's across the Mediterranean and Central Mediterranean routes. But in fact, through our work, what we found is just there is no evidence to stack this up. The children that we work with in Europe, the children that we meet that are identified to us, they are there for very legitimate reasons. They have family, perhaps in other parts of Europe, or because the push factor is much greater than any pull factor that could ever be offered. They're there simply because they are fleeing numerous conflicts across the world. They're there because they're pushed by the challenges in their own countries, and because of persecution in many cases. And what we also see is that children aren't aware of regulations and legislation across Europe. They're not, I wish they were. I wish they were aware that they had a right to legal and safe family reunion from a country closer to home than having to make that journey to Europe, or that they have a legal right to family reunion within Europe, which means that they don't have to cross the channel in the back of a lorry, or they don't have to, they don't have to take a boat to get to where to reach their family. But they're simply not aware of regulation. All they're aware of is that in many cases, there is a safe home that they know they could reach with a member of their extended family or even immediate family in a country in Europe, and that's why they're travelling there.
Yeah. Now, Beth, you're one of these remarkable people that's doing so much day in, day out at the forefront of these issues. What are the main challenges your organisation is facing currently, and how do you see those evolving in the near future?
Yeah, so what we've seen over the last few years of operating is there is a huge need for safe and legal routes for refugees as an alternative to what we know happens already, which is the illegal journeys that people make and the dangerous journeys that people make in the hands of smugglers, in the hands of traffickers. But unfortunately, we are seeing a move away from those safe routes and a move away from inter-country cooperation when it comes to providing those safe and legal routes. And in the UK, as the UK prepares to leave the European Union, this is something that we think is extremely important, that whatever the outcome of the UK's departure from the European Union, that we need to guarantee that there will still be these safe and legal means for children to be able to reunite with family in the UK, as are under the current EU regulations. And that's not necessarily the case if the UK departs without a deal from the EU, but we hope that the government and the Home Office will guarantee that those routes will still be available, because they are so important. And what we know is that if they are not available, then we know children will continue to risk their lives in more dangerous ways.
Yeah. Beth Gardiner-Smith, CEO of Safe Passage, thank you very much.
Thank you.